Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up, sealing a deal. Iran and the P5+1 countries settle their differences and present a 100-page nuclear agreement. It now has to be ratified. We'll be looking at who conceded what. Syria becomes a prolific consumer of Captagon, a type of amphetamine said to be used by more and more fighters there. And a TV show about Egyptian Jews in the late 40s is causing controversy as viewers question the historical legitimacy of the production. After 18 consecutive days of talks and 12 years of deadlock, a deal has been reached between Iran and the P5+1 countries, that is the US, UK, France, China, Russia and Germany. The plan is to get Tehran to scale back its nuclear activities in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. The agreement now has to be ratified. Mark Thompson looks at the compromises that had to be made to get all sides to sign up.
A deal pitched as a victory for all sides. The agreement between world powers and Iran will see the country limit its nuclear program. In return, sanctions that have had a stranglehold on the country's economy will be lifted.
Because of this deal, the international community will be able to verify that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon.
It comes after 2 years of tough talks and more than a decade of international pressure. Iran has agreed to allow the inspection of its nuclear plants. UN inspectors will also be allowed to monitor military sites, although requests can be challenged. The country will destroy 98% of its enriched uranium stockpile and build no nuclear reactors for at least a decade. A partial UN arms embargo and missile sanctions will remain in place for a further 5 and 8 years respectively. Sanctions can also be restored if Iran breaks the agreement. In return, the so-called P5+1, including the US, UK, France, Germany, Russia and China, have agreed to lift UN, EU and US financial sanctions, allow Iran to continue its enrichment process, including centrifuges for research and development, and enable Iran to export and import arms on a case-by-case basis.
Our overriding objective was to ensure that nuclear enrichment, Pacific nuclear enrichment, had to be able to continue in Iran. And the second red line was that unfair sanctions slapped on our population should be lifted.
The IAEA too has signed a roadmap agreement with Iran. That deal will attempt to clarify past and present outstanding issues regarding the country's nuclear program.
A joint text now ready to be ratified. If it is, it could open a new phase in relations between Iran and the West. A thawing of ties began with the diplomatic push by President Hassan Rouhani to put an end to sanctions. Mark Thompson looks back at the marathon talks since Rouhani's election in 2013.
June 2013. A new Iranian leader and a fresh chance for nuclear talks. Hassan Rouhani is elected president. He's considered more moderate, pragmatic, and more willing to talk to other world leaders than his predecessor, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Within months, US President Barack Obama had picked up the phone, the first direct contact between American and Iranian presidents since 1979. Nuclear negotiations soon followed.
It's now time for dialogue. By dialogue, I mean a process, a mentality that would require us to recognize the rights, interests, and aspirations of all.
Before the year was out, Tehran reached an interim agreement with the so-called P5+1, limiting its nuclear program. The group, consisting of the US, China, Russia, the UK, Germany and France, agreed to partially lift sanctions and unfreeze Iranian assets. In return, Iran agreed to freeze its uranium enrichment at 20% and get rid of its stockpiles. President Rouhani said the deal would not change the country's plans.
No matter what interpretations are given, Iran's right to enrichment has been recognized in the text of the agreement. And for that reason, I announced to the Iranian nation that Iran's enrichment activity will continue as before.
Deadlines for a comprehensive agreement came and went. First, in July of last year, and then again in November. World leaders then gathered in Lausanne, Switzerland in March to finalise talks. By April, the two sides had struck a framework deal to restrict Iran's nuclear programme in return for sanctions relief. The agreement, described as a decisive step by negotiators, led to scenes of celebrations on the streets of Tehran. International trade embargoes, including those on arms, oil and banking, have long had a chokehold on the Iranian economy.
Lots of things are definitely going to improve. Relations between Iran, Europe and other countries will improve, and the pressure on those living here should also ease a little.
Attempts to finalise a deal between the P5+1 and Tehran started in Vienna last month after several rounds of discussions. Both Iran and the US claim a comprehensive agreement has never been closer.
We're just working, and it's too early to make any judgments.
Once again, deadlines have been problematic. Among the reasons for the delays, arguments over inspections and the speed at which sanctions are lifted. But after a third extension in 2 weeks, both sides have confirmed a deal has now been reached, bringing an end to the marathon talks.
According to the UN, Syria has long been a transit point for drugs coming from Europe, Turkey and Lebanon, much of which was destined for wealthy Gulf states. Since the war in Syria began and a myriad of armed groups have taken over, Syria itself has become a major consumer. One drug in particular is proving popular. It's a type of amphetamine called Captagon, used to keep fighters awake during long battles. Clovis Casali reports.
Lebanon's Bekaa Valley has a history of smuggling and trafficking of all sorts, an area where illegal activities include narcotics. Ahmed is one of those who transports and sells a type of amphetamine called Captagon, a cheap and hugely popular drug in the Middle East.
Here's what I sell. If someone takes Captagon, he's sure to stay awake and not go to sleep. In a bag like this one, you get around 200 pills. One costs about $20, and some only $17 or $18 each.
Before the war broke out in Syria, all of the Captagon produced in Lebanon headed to the Gulf states. But a new market opened up with rebel fighters keen to get their hands on it. Traffickers and users don't bother about Sharia law when it comes to Captagon.
Every dealer has his contacts, his network. It's our business and no one else's. We sell in towns like Arsal in Lebanon or in others. We sell to rebel fighters and to anyone. All that matters is doing business.
Users tend to take the drug at night, according to this specialist.
When someone swallows Captagon, he feels more energetic and less tired. But it's only an impression, and the fatigue accumulates. Because it's a form of amphetamine, Captagon increases nervosity and makes the consumer delirious. All of that with that feeling that he's overpowerful.
Lebanese anti-narcotics forces managed to seize a significant amount of drugs, but they know that large quantities still cross borders.
In April 2014 alone, we seized 30 million pills that you can see here. 30 million Captagon pills. The drug is exported a lot to Gulf states and in particular to Saudi Arabia.
Easy to produce and to sell, Captagon is a drug of choice for smugglers. Its illegal trade could even increase as the war in Syria drags on, with youths desperate to escape reality and fighters looking to gain strength.
Well, we're going to give you a glimpse now of a soap opera that is the talk of the town in Cairo. Harat al-Yahud, which translates as the Jewish neighbourhood, looks at the lives of Jews in the Egyptian capital in the late 40s. For some viewers, however, it's representation that's far from reality, painting a picture of prosperity where there was poverty. They also questioned the political position of the show. Phoebe Lanzer-Wood has the story.
It's been one of the television highlights during Ramadan this year, but has evoked as much controversy as it has praise. Haret al-Yahud depicts life in Cairo's Jewish quarter between 1948 and 1954. It's a crucial period of Egypt's history, portrayed through the romance between Ali, a Muslim army officer, and his Jewish neighbour Layla. The lovers are torn apart when Ali is captured by Israeli soldiers following the creation of the State of Israel. A mass exodus of Egypt's 80,000 Jews was sparked after the ensuing Arab-Israeli war. Today, only a few dozen remain in Cairo and Alexandria.
We knew the Egyptian Jews. They were like family, like brothers and cousins. When we were children, we would light candles in their buildings, and they would give us chocolate. They were respectable people.
The Jewish quarter depicts people of all religions living side by side in a more cosmopolitan Cairo of days gone by. But its idyllic portrait of society has been criticised by those who remember what life was really like in one of the city's poorest areas.
I don't recognise our neighbourhood at all looking at this TV show, not from what they show. I say this in all seriousness and not in bad faith. This TV show does not represent the truth of what we've gone through.
Viewers have pointed out historical inaccuracies with the political upheavals that shook the flourishing Jewish community. The Muslim Brotherhood, the enemies of current Egyptian President al-Sisi, are presented as the only perpetrators of attacks against Jews in the early 50s.
My goal was not to say whether the Jews were nice or nasty. My role was to tell the story of Egyptian Jews in that era. I don't take sides. No one influenced this production.
The series initially won praise from the Israeli embassy in Egypt for its positive representation of Jews. But the show's negative portrayal of the State of Israel has since been denounced. Still, the Jewish quarter is a vivid reminder of an oft-forgotten era.
Well, that wraps it up for this week's show. Do take care.